Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm Natalie, Irwin, Director of Stakeholder Engagement here at Efficiency Canada. I'm located in Ottawa, which is the unceded territories of Algonquin Nation, but we are a national organization. So actually, welcome to our last discovery session of 2021. Before we get started, a reminder to everyone that our guest speaker today will speak for approximately 20 minutes before we open the floor, not so much for questions, although you're welcome to ask questions, but we invite you to join in the conversation and share your ideas and look back and what was special to you in 2021. Feel free to use the Q&A box on the bottom of the screen if you do have questions, and we'll get to you at the end. And also you can use the chat. I'll try and get to everything there. And also if you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you and you can share your reflection directly. So I'm pleased to welcome our special guest today, Executive Director of Efficiency Canada, Corey Diamond, who's going to take us down a walk down memory lane as we reflect over the good things that happened over 2021 and what we like to affectionately call a love fest for energy efficiency. Thanks for joining us, Corey.
And thank you, Natalie. And hi, everyone. You're lucky to see me in a tie. I think this is the second time I've worn a tie in 2021. The first time was with Prime Minister Trudeau, and we were invited alongside him virtually. But so then I felt, you know what, this is just as important and you all deserve it. So I threw on a tie and a shirt and a jacket, all for you, for the Love Fest for Energy Efficiency, which is 2021 in review. So here's what we're going to do today. There's four kind of parts to what I want to talk about. The first is just taking stock of where we're at in the world of energy efficiency in Canada. And then I want to talk a year of firsts, a year of big leaps, and then a year of framing the issue. And what I'm hoping is that by the end of this, everyone feels that we have accomplished a lot, that we have a lot of momentum going into the new year, and everyone's feeling proud of being part of this great sector and pushing for the agenda that we need to see happen, not only for obviously to avert the dire consequences of climate change, but for boosting all of the great things that energy efficiency brings to Canada's economy, and more importantly to boosting some of the social equity issues that are near and dear to many of our hearts. So let's jump in and take some stock about what's going on. And unfortunately, it's not a great situation, but it's good to start low and we'll end high. Energy efficiency savings, spending, and emissions are not going in the right direction. And this chart and the next one show you what that means. And essentially, this is from our scorecard, provincial energy efficiency scorecard we released. And you can kind of see a downward trend in incremental energy savings. We're down about 23 petajoules from 2017. Electricity is stable year over year, but natural gas is down. And so if we're thinking about all the work we're doing and looking across years, we have to turn this around and get the savings on a positive trajectory. On spending, same kind of thing. We're about $1 billion down year over year and from 2018. And electricity, interestingly, is down the most. So this kind of shows you, again, that while there are lots of promising activities, and that's what I'll talk about for the rest of it, we do have a long way to go to kind of switch that trajectory around. And lastly, this is just by looking at emissions from buildings. We do see reductions in GHGs, and that's largely driven by the electricity source, cleaner electricity, but direct emissions from buildings have actually gone up in the past 2 decades. So again, another trajectory we need to reverse. And I do think that what I'm going to talk about next is definitely getting us on our way, so that hopefully when I'm here next year on this call, we see a different trend. So while that picture is there, the ambition and the policies are going in the right direction. And over here at Efficiency Canada, we've been super buoyed by how the kinds of action and ambition we're seeing from all levels of government. And I wanted to spend the rest of the time talking about that so that we put it into a bit of context about how much really happening in this sector and how much we really are moving the needle. But first, a warning, there's not any explicit content in this presentation, but it is a warning that I might not get to everything, and I might not talk about the project you're working on, and I apologize for that. It's really hard to kind of pull this all together in 20 minutes, but I do want to make sure that you know that, and that it is recognized, and maybe that's what we can do at the Q&A afterwards, is talk about some of the things I forgot. Okay, a year of firsts. First thing I wanted to talk about was this was the first time we saw real thought in energy efficiency platforms from all major federal parties. We were able to work with multiple parties and kind of get this out of the partisan kind of squabbling that you see in other issues and even other climate issues. And we really saw a concerted effort by all parties to kind of take this seriously. And that really does set us up for the long term. So we were really happy to see that in the previous election. We wrote a blog about this that outlined, what each party was doing and was saying on this. And we're happy to see that that we've moved past kind of surface level, basic kind of mentions of energy efficiency to really thinking about the hard policies that are going to get us there. The other thing that we saw this year as a first is that Canada now has, for the very first time, what's called the Net Zero Emissions Accountability. It's no longer an act because it's now been passed and is now a law. And what that means is the government, no matter who is in power, must report every 5 years on what they're doing to hit net zero emissions by 2050. This is an accountability that is happening around the world. It's not just a commitment anymore, that this is now enshrined in law. And with that comes support through bodies like the Net Zero Advisory Body, who we've been speaking very closely with on some of these issues, that inform the government specifically on what it needs to do in order to meet these legislated targets every 5 years. So we should all be applauding that, and that's a great first. The other thing that's happening as far as first is across the country, we're seeing a lot of momentum at the provincial level. We come out with the scorecard every year that has this map and ranks and benchmarks, provinces against each other. And it's easy to kind of get lost in the data and show countrywide trends, as I showed earlier, because down in the nitty gritty of every single province, we are seeing incredible action across all provinces. Everyone has a good story to tell, and everyone is trying to do more than what they had done in the year before. And so we're very happy to see great leadership again in BC and some great programs and policies in Quebec and Atlantic Canada. But across the board, there's a lot going on, and we're very happy to kind of witness the momentum that's happening at the provincial level. Another year of first is some really big moves that are happening at the municipal level. In Vancouver, they've got what they call their 6 big moves. In Edmonton, there's a building retrofit accelerator program. In Montreal, we've got, they've targeted eliminating oil heating and building benchmarking. Toronto's Transform TO program is starting to get some real policy meat behind it through council. Halifax has a great plan around net zero new construction within a decade. There is so much happening at the municipal level, and we're really proud to work alongside some municipalities as they try to back up the climate emergencies they've announced with some real action and real teeth behind those actions. And I think you're going to see a lot more of this in the years to come. The other big first that happened this year, and we had a discovery session on this, is our friends at Indigenous Clean Energy came out with this report called Energy Foundations. And it's the first time that we actually have an accounting of what it's going to take to upgrade and retrofit to high energy efficiency standards for all buildings in Indigenous communities. It's going to take a lot of money, $5.4 billion, but it's going to create so much value in Indigenous communities, including over 47,000 jobs and $1 billion in savings. And so together with Indigenous Clean Energy and other groups, calling for a national collaborative process on this to start to chip away at this. And we're really proud that for the first time, we really have a sense of what it's actually going to take in order to do that. This year was also a year of big leaps, and these big leaps don't often show up in the outputs or the outcomes of policy that you see when legislation is passed or a program is launched and things, because sometimes policies are like kind of dominoes, and these leaps need to be recognized as we go through the process. And the first big leap that I wanted to talk about, I talked about a little bit earlier, was around what the federal government has been doing. And it's not just money. We did some analysis that looked at budget 2021, as well as previous announcements from fall 2020. The federal government is going to be investing $3.5 billion a year annually into energy efficiency programs. So that's nothing to shake a stick at, and that should be applauded as well. It's far and above anything a previous government has done. But they've done other things too that I think we also need to recognize in the policy sphere. Things like sticking to like high energy efficiency standards for appliances, despite what was happening, down in the U.S. Under President Trump. There's a national ZEV mandate, something we've been calling for, and lots of other groups have been pushing for the last few years. Something that has shown up in our scorecard every year, and that's coming. That should be applauded as well. And then most recently, just yesterday afternoon, there's mandate letters that explicitly lay out huge policy shifts and changes to tackle buildings emissions and transportation, industrial emissions, as well as workforce development. And these are things that we're starting to see are should be viewed as big leaps that are happening in this sector. And one of the things that we've been, really advocating hard for, and I know some of you on this call have as well, is things around building codes. And we're finally going to see a net zero emissions building code in Canada by 2024. There's a lot of work to get us there, but recognition about the importance of, essentially, if you're in a hole, the first thing to do is to stop digging. And so what we want to be doing is making sure that these codes are implemented well in partnership with provinces, municipalities, and the sector itself, so that we can start building only zero emissions buildings in Canada within a couple of years. The other thing that has taken a huge leap in 2021 is innovative financing. And I think the recognition that this transition to a zero emissions economy is not going to happen completely on the dimes of any government. Policy sets the direction for sure, but money needs to follow as well. And we've seen some big moves from the Canada Infrastructure Bank. They announced last year, or 2020, $2 billion towards financing deep retrofits. And looks like they are well on their way to signing and enacting deals on that. Certainly CMHC, apparently any day now or any week now, is going to be announcing a $40,000 interest-free loan for homeowners to complement the Greener Homes program. But really, we're also seeing some really interesting program ideas and generation, as well as interest from the private sector. And Sofiac is a really interesting model of the government of Quebec, a private pension fund, Fondation, and a private company, Econolaire, coming together and providing really good financing alongside the support you need in order to get deeper retrofits completed in commercial buildings happening in Quebec. And so Sofiac is actually going to present on Discovery, our first one, in 2022. So a huge leap in Canada's recognition about the role money is going to play in helping us get to the targets that we need. The other thing that we've noticed this year is, and we've been definitely trying our best at doing this and working with others who are also trying to do this, is that while, yes, there's a year of firsts and awesome, great new policies, and there's been some big leaps kind of getting us to those big policies, there is also sort of a recognition that we need to be doing things differently. And so I kind of like to highlight some things that have been, reframing the issue around how energy efficiency can reach its true potential in this country and the value chain that is represented from that. The first thing we did to try and reframe this issue is we released the Climate Retrofit Mission Report. My colleague Brendan Haley, along with the legendary Ralph Torrey, wrote this report earlier this year and basically worked backwards. If we were going to retrofit every building in Canada to get to net zero, what would that take? And how long would it take? And how much money would it take? And if we continue on the course that we're currently on, it's about 142 years to retrofit every residential building in this country. So clearly we need a new paradigm of how retrofits happen. And we've taken inspiration around the world, things like Energy Sprong and others, but really trying to frame this retrofit issue as a mission, that the government needs to come together and say that we are going to retrofit every building within a generation. And there are ways that we need to be doing that are not anywhere close to the way we're doing things now. And they require a much more complex ecosystem to do that. So like any good think tank, we've developed some really interesting models that showcase kind of how this mission approach can be developed. The core element of this mission approach is what are called market development teams. Are going to be people across the country working together on, really different, unique, innovative ways to do massive and deep retrofits in a short period of time, and bringing together all the sector's stakeholders in order to make that happen. Contractors, building owners, and construction companies and municipalities, to try and figure out what's going to work. And then we come up with these great innovative solutions, and then we just want to replicate them absolutely everywhere. And so building this thing up to scale is what's going to take us to that place where every building is retrofitted, and it's going to lead to the kind of the policy and regulatory shifts that are going to be kind of self-enforcing and help to really push it along and catalyze this type of work, as well as finance being a huge part of this. So a complex issue, but all around a simple concept, which is we need to think about and reframe how we're doing retrofits completely differently into a mission-oriented approach. The other thing that we've been trying to do and pulling together a community of practice from people around the country is framing the need to think about all Canadians in this. We know that more than 20% of Canadians are living in what is defined as energy poverty. And these are people who should not and cannot be left behind. So we need a national strategy around this. Certainly provinces are doing their part in developing these types of programs to help people who are unfortunately basically trying to determine whether or not they have money to heat or money to eat. And we think that we need to frame this issue completely differently, not just as simply a climate issue or simply as an equity issue, but as a real Canadian issue that has to be addressed if we're going to transition to this zero emissions economy. So my colleague Abby is leading that work on our end and doing it with some brilliant people across the sector and developing a group that is really kind of driving it. My other colleague Kirsten is also doing such excellent work in kind of bringing people together to kind of create and organize a much broader and louder voice on this issue. So we're really happy, and that lots of people are joining us in reframing the issue. The other issue that we've been involved in reframing is careers and workforce development. My colleague Kelsey has been hard at work in launching what's known as the Discovery eHub, and really trying to frame energy efficiency as an excellent career opportunity for people, but not just saying you should come into the sector, but actually implementing ways that people can identify the pathways and journeys they can take to become somebody who works in energy efficiency. We kind of think of it as this bit of a catch-22 or two ends of the same stick. We could be super successful at the policy shifts and the policy changes that are happening, at various different levels of government. But if we don't have a workforce to do the work, then it's going to be a really bumpy road to getting to where we want to be. So something like the hub is a step in that direction, and working with other groups who are really thinking about how to attract more people and give people more skills so that they can do all the work that we want to see happen. And then the other framing issue that my colleague CD kind of runs, that we've been involved in and really trying to bring the sector together, we call the campaign Our Human Energy. Many of you have seen this over the last couple of years, but kind of framing things a little bit differently and showcasing how diverse and excited and passionate and just such a great place to be the energy efficiency sector is. And Our Human Energy campaign has moved from sort of like the initial stages where we just wanted to kind of, create a brand, to a much more implementable solution to actually showcasing all the various different people who do this. We now have regular webinars where we're highlighting the types of jobs that you could get in this sector. We have a brand new Instagram account called the Humans of Energy Efficiency that are, again, showcasing people from across the country doing such really cool work. And we're really using this as an inspiring way to frame energy efficiency as a fun, exciting, purposeful, mission-led career choice for people around this country, and it's working. We're getting lots of interactions, lots of engagement on our various different posts. This year, as a corollary to this, we held Energy Efficiency Day. We had 209 organizations join us, which was way more than we had in the previous 2 years. clearly there's a buzz out there. And if we can help frame this under a banner and bring everybody into the tent, we can do a lot together, not just in showcasing that this is such a great place and career choice for people, but we can be stronger as a concerted political voice to the policymakers so that we have the policies that we need in order for us to be successful in the work we do. So super proud of the sector who has really come together in 2021 and organized itself and has begun to really be a real force with policymakers. That's really undeniable, and it's done in such a fun, exciting, and future thinking positive way, not in a sort of negative or kind of alternative approach. So super happy about that as well. So with that, I mean, that's all the stuff I've got. This is one of the funnest presentations I get to do every year because I get to talk about all the great things, but it also gives me so much hope and passion and excitement for 2022. We have so much to build upon and so much to do in the years ahead. This is nothing short of the biggest challenge humans have faced, and it's so great to work alongside all of you and everyone else in the sector who is up for the challenge every day and is showing up and doing the work that needs to get done so that we can, live a very happy, purposeful, and profitable life. So thank you very much. That's the end of the formal presentation. As I said earlier in the warning, there's probably so much I missed. But if you want to add to the Love Fest or you want to ask questions about anything I said, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much for that, Corey. That was a great reflection of what's happened the past year. There's been a lot. I think I say that every single year, but it's true, even more and more so, which is fantastic. A quick reminder that everyone, before we open the floor to questions/comments, sharing of good feelings, we do have one rule, and that's the same for presenters, and that's no sales pitches, please, and includes statements disguised as questions. We do have one additional rule for today, though, and that is no negative reflections, because this is a love fest after all. So let's keep up with the love. So Corey, I see there's a few questions in there and comments, and again, if anyone wants to raise their hand and say anything, feel free to. I know Andrew says that, and we can go back and forth on these, Corey, so that I'm just not sitting here reading them. But Andrew says, it's been an exciting development in 2021, I've never seen so many conversations and coverage of residential electrification. In a cold climate like Canada, energy efficiency will be an integral part of these projects. And e-bikes are starting to take a movement too.
Awesome.
Very true.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And the only thing I'll say is that you're not the first person to say that, like, you're having a lot of conversations around this. Like, I did some work on my house this year, and the contractors are telling me that this is like, they've never seen more like homeowners talking about this. So that's really cool to hear. And we hope that people who are doing this work every day are hearing more and more about, like, yeah, there's a buzz out there. Like, a lot of people are interested in this topic. And so, yeah, we're happy to play such, even a small part in that.
I'm going to jump over to Zena here. If you have your hand raised, go for it.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to say thanks to everybody on the call, Efficiency Canada and all its tentacles, for all the work and time and energies that's been put into it. It's nice to see that there's action behind the talk. And we all know that sometimes politicians talk very well and then there's no action behind it. But all I've seen from Efficiency Canada has been action and not just talk, and all the tentacles are doing the same thing. Speaking from here in BC and all that we've gone through this year with our climate issues, believe me, there's a lot of talk here. I just hope that in 2022 we can take the talk into layman's terms so that more of the population can be involved in the conversation. But again, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Zena. That was insightful and full of love. And I'm going to just say there's a question here for you, Corey. So it was a good question from Kathleen is, first of all, statement is, thanks for your positiveness. I will allow those statements disguised as questions in this case. So Kingston, Ontario City Council just voted to extend gas lines in the city. How can we best argue against this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I've heard different things about what cities have been doing. I think that, I get a lot of inspiration from what happened in Whitby, Ontario recently around what's called green development standards. And green development standards are essentially a way for a municipality to set more stringent building code standards for buildings that are going to be built in their borders. And one of the big reasons that they were able to do that was because a lot of people showed up, and the sort of the quote unquote opposition to this, when really it's the people who are for good positive change. They were well organized, and they had their arguments in a row, and they showed up. And our job at Efficiency Canada is specifically on things like codes, is we've developed this Codes for Climate toolkit, and the Codes for Climate toolkit is meant for advocates so that they have all the issues down in order, and then they can then organize themselves locally and show up. And so we've seen it across the country, and most importantly at the municipal level, you do see a lot of action from advocates, and it works. The number of people who showed up in Vancouver, the number of people who showed up in Toronto recently, like this is what's happening across the country, but you got to be organized, get your arguments in a row and go for it. So I don't know specifically the issue of what you're talking about in Kingston, but I do see that change is happening across the country because people are showing up and getting organized and using the tools available to be there. And it's grunt work. It really is sitting through those council meetings and things, but that's where you can get a lot of strong action.
Definitely, I would echo Corey's comments for sure. There's a question here from David. Is Corey, the net energy produced by heat pumps has been recognized in the US as renewable energy? I'll state that you might not be able to answer this, but do you see this coming in Canada?
That's a really interesting point. I had not heard about that. And I guess it would be up to the provincial level about, maybe where this is happening. Let me step back. Maybe where this is happening at the US is at the state level. And states have begun to implement what are called renewable power portfolio standards. So essentially, there is a law regulating utilities to say that a certain percentage of your power needs to come from renewable energy portfolio standards. So in states like New York, they've added in performance standards around energy efficiency as well. So essentially saying it's going to be easier for us to meet this renewable power standard in this certain percentage if we're reducing demand overall. So let's kind of combine those. I don't know if that's exactly what has happened or where you saw that, but it would be very interesting to see that kind of leadership in Canada. I know BC with the Clean BC program has just announced that they will be setting a regulatory target for all utilities, gas and electric, on energy efficiency. So maybe there's an element there that can be worked on. If this is to happen in Canada, I would expect that it would happen at the provincial level and likely include the regulatory side of things, which needs reform on a number of issues. So maybe that's where it could happen here.
Interesting. And I also have a question here from Alex on building codes. So a lot of talk recently on building codes. Do you think that getting national codes aligned has a lot of scalability impacts?
So yes and no. So the easy answer is, yeah, in theory, the federal government is going to deliver on what's called a model building code. And they're going to say, okay, here's what is, what you should adopt, provinces, even though it's provincial jurisdiction. There's also an agreement amongst provinces to harmonize on various different laws and regulations, one of them being building codes. So you would think in theory, it's easy for the federal government to set the standard, show the leadership, and then provinces, because they want to harmonize on these things, that they would just follow suit. But in real life, it's not that easy. So what we have to do is sort of grease the wheels a bit, and to get to the scalability and the time frame that is set out by the federal government just yesterday, what we're calling for is an adoption and compliance fund. And that's going to be available to municipalities and provinces who want to move ahead fast and want to align with what the model code is saying, and give them the tools so that they can do the training and provide incentives, build the capacity regionally and locally so that you can actually make it happen. And I think that, combined with strong leadership at the federal level, is going to help at least get a handful of provinces moving in the direction that BC has already moved. And so we're really kind of, hopeful and optimistic about seeing some action like that in 2022.
Awesome, Corey. I have a question here from Alex. What are your thoughts on district heating and cooling? So a group that Alex is a member of believes this is key, cheap to capture, store, reuse thermal energy, interested in topic-specific discussions.
Yeah, it's a good question. So thanks for that, Alex. I'm not an expert on district heating and cooling. I know a little bit about it from Enwave because I live in Toronto, and sort of have toured the facility and read about it. The one thing I'll say that kind of encapsulates our viewpoint on this is that energy efficiency has a way of making every other low carbon solution better and easier to implement. So district heating and cooling is a supply side alternative. It has been used by a number of different districts around the world. It's been effective. Again, I'm not an expert on it, but the way we look at things is, imagine if we can reduce the amount of demand first. And if you're planning something as complex as district heating and cooling, then you also have to think of the demand side first, because maybe you don't need a facility or a solution that's that big. So what we always try to do and promote in conjunction with other groups is to say, look, let's start to include energy efficiency very early on in the planning of this. What would happen if we reduce demand by 50%? What would we have available to power other kinds of things like electric vehicles or heat pumps? And then what else would we need in order to make up for the demand, or to satisfy the rest of the demand? So that's kind of how we look at things. And we're really trying to kind of frame efficiency as a core part of any other low carbon solution and make sure that they're kind of combined together.
Exactly. I have actually one final question for you, Corey. So if you could share one last message with everyone here today that you hope people took away from your presentation, what would that be?
I was afraid you're going to ask me that. I didn't have an answer ready, but I don't know. I mean, the main thing is, and we don't mix words at Efficiency Canada. Some people post in the chat there that you see action, and thank you for your comment saying that. For us, we are really, laser focused on pushing a policy agenda, and that policy agenda does not happen unless there's a political constituency of people calling for it and who will benefit from it. And all of you are part of that constituency. You may not think you're part of a political system, but by being in this sector and doing the work you do, those stories need to be told. And if we're going to get to where we need to be with the support from governments and the private sector and financing and all this kind of stuff, they have to know that there is a organized, concerted group of people who are ready to step up and do this work and grow as a sector. Because if they don't know that, then we're just going to be lower in the pile of priorities. And so, you've heard us say this all the time in all of our work, that we really are trying to mobilize us together so that we are a louder voice and that we are proving to policymakers that this sector is ready to do this hard work, and it's going to be hard. And so I guess that's my final message, is that know that you're part of something bigger every day when you're going to work. Know that is making actual real change in Canada and around the world, but also know that we are nowhere near where we need to be. And we all need to double down and do as much as we can going into 2022. So optimistic, but also realistic approach to kind of saying, guys, we just got to keep going.
That's a great message, Corey. And actually, one of the regional champion advocacy sessions I attended, I think it was yesterday, someone mentioned about lobbying, and I said, well, lobbying kind of has a negative connotation with it, but I like to call it educating versus lobbying, which is really the benefit of energy efficiency. A lot of people, it's complex, so you just go in and talk to your elected official and say, just tell them about energy efficiency, and they're like, I had no idea.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
It's for the majority of the time, it's a win, and it's a great. You leave the meeting with a great feeling because you've just convinced one more one more person. Not really convinced them, you just educated them. So
That's right.
think of
Yeah.
it that way. So thank you for joining us today, Corey, and thanks for a look back over the last year. We will return for discovery session on January 14th with a Conolair who's going to share details on Sofiac, as Corey mentioned, for what Energy Capital Magazine is actually calling the largest energy efficiency initiative in Canada. So it's going to be, we're starting the year off with a bang on January 14th. As we head out, Corey and I would like to share this video that highlights the work of our amazing volunteers, of regional champions and building co-council members from across Canada. What these volunteers have accomplished in 2021 in the last year was absolutely astounding. And on a related note, we are actually looking for 6 new volunteers to join our regional champions for next year. Applications do close on December 31st, so you still have time to apply. If you're looking to get more involved and give back, I encourage you to apply. Have a fantastic holiday, everyone, and relaxation break, and take care. Bye-bye.
So here we go. We're going to show this video. I would encourage you all to turn up your speakers. This has been dubbed the Energy Efficiency Song of the Year by our staff. So yeah, get up, dance around, watch this cool video, and then carry on with your day. And I really do appreciate everyone listening in. So here we go.
And the world is made of energy, and the world is electricity, and the world is made of energy, and there's a lot inside of you, and there's a lot inside of me, and the world is made of energy, and the world is synchronicity, and the world is made of energy, and there's a lot inside of you, and there's a lot inside of me. It's gonna be
Bye, everyone. Take care. Thanks for joining us.